Kund Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kund Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kund Bihari Radha Madhava Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Radha, Madhava Radha, Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha, Madhava Radha, Madhava Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Gaura Premanande. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa. Privraj Gacharya Stotra Satta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Chirabhai Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Skanda Biti Founder Acharyas Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jainita Gaura Pimanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada Ki. Jai Hare Krishna. New guest, Raghava, Gauranitai. Raghava. Raghava. His brother's name is Madhava. Yeah. Gauranitai Prabhu is from Hungary. Yes. Disciple of His Holiness Sivaram Maharaj. Raghava is from Hyderabad. Hyderabad, right?
Yes.
Secunderabad. Twin cities, yeah. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksuranmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pramami Hari Priye Vansakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nara, Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed or practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, whose praise with transcendental songs becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nisreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyayanam Mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Mukam karoti vasaram pagum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Yat kripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our morning Bhagavatam class. We are continuing from chapter 7 of the first canto, chapter entitled The Son of Drona Punished. Let's see. Yes. Yesterday we read text number 46. So we are reading today 47. Ma Rodid Asya Janani Gautami Pati Devata Yathaham Mrita Vatsarta Rodini Asru Mukhi Muhuhu Marohid Asya Janani Gautami Pati Devata Yathaham Mrita Vatsarta Rodimyashru Mukhi Muhu Marohid Asya Janani Gautami Pati Devata Yathaham Mrita Vatsarta Rodimyashru Mukhi Muhu Marodid Asya Janani Gautami Pati Devata Yathaham Mrita Vatsarta Rodimyashru Mukhi Muhu Hid Asya Janani Gautami Pati Devata Yathaham Mrita Rodimyashru Mukhi Muhu Marohid Asya Janani Gautami Pati Devata Yathaham Mrita Vatsarta Rodimyashru Mukhi Muhu Ma Do not Rodit Make cry Asya His Janani Mother Gautami the wife of Drona Pati Devata chaste Yatha as has Aham myself Vrittavatsa one whose child is dead Artha distressed Rodini crying Asru Mukhi tears in the eyes Muhuhu constantly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. My Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. Kindly repeat after me. My Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. Purport. Sympathetic good lady as she was, Srimati Draupadi, did not want to put the wife of Dronacharya in the same position of childlessness, both from the point of motherly feelings and from the respectable position held by the wife of Dronacharya. I think we'll read a few verses. It's the ongoing Leela of very difficult situation created actually by Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, who had taken upon himself to actually kill the 5 sons of the Pandavas, as we know, which was, of course, totally against Shastra, especially someone coming from Brahmana background. And this created a whole very controversial situation because Krishna had ordered Arjuna to immediately kill Ashwatthama, and he hesitated. Arjuna hesitated, and of course here we are seeing different reasons or arguments being presented by Draupadi, who of course, although she lost her 5 sons in this most terrible way, and we were discussing in the last few days how the Vedic culture is very, very elevated, very exalted culture, which takes into consideration, that was the main discussion actually yesterday, the whole aspect of avoiding avoiding to cause any kind of suffering or pain to other living entities. This being one of the foremost, we could say, qualities that Vaishnavas are meant to display. And so here she's addressing, that's part of the culture, she's addressing her husband, my lord, because in the Vedic culture, the wife has a great respect and esteem for her husband, and simultaneously also the husband considers the wife as a goddess of fortune. These are the words that Narada Muni uses actually in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam when he describes ideal family life, where if one follows these principles that are enjoined in the Shastra, the principle, one of the most important principles, which is unknown in modern day society, and which is not so easy to follow also even amongst our own devotees, but it's only until and unless we follow this first of many principles, is the connected with the samskaras, not samsaras, the samskaras, the purificatory process or processes. There are many, there are 10 main samskaras. And the first one, of course, is called the Garbhadhana Samskara. And you try to explain the Garbhadhana Samskara to people in the Western countries, and you're going to have a hard time. They just cannot relate. But this is a very important, we could say, foundational principles of the Vedic culture, is that there's a purpose for marriage, and there's a place and a purpose for sex life, and primarily it is meant for procreation, and therefore there's a whole system that before husband and wife uh, engage in procreation, they follow some particular rituals, and they prepare themselves both physically, emotionally, and spiritually to actually call upon a a soul, um, a very special soul, who will have better chances of becoming a devotee, because that is the very clear and basic understanding that all that we do is meant to actually help individuals become elevated and advanced ultimately in Krishna consciousness. So, like this, Draupadi is, I mean, having felt the pain of separation in losing her children, she does not want the wife of Dronacharya to experience the same type of suffering and pain that she has undergone. So, like this, we um, we get some understanding of how very very deep, profound uh, of nature is upon which, let's say, the Vedic culture is is based. So we can continue unless there's some comments on this. Yeah.
I have some.
Yes.
So I see here another very important principle uh, explained or underlined.
Explain.
Explained means we can understand from this conversation
Yes.
between the Pandavas, Krishna, Draupadi, that we are dealing, we are understanding, we are trying to understand pure devotees' motivations and behavior, and we are not on that level. So we have to be very careful when we try to understand them, not to use mundane logic, mundane experience and judgment system, because they are nurtured spiritual individuals. Practically, they're all speaking the truth,
Yes.
but their not truth looks like not uh, not always matching. So we should not say I am taking part of that person and not agree with other. You shouldn't take part like in that pastime of when Lord Nityananda was joking, arguing with Advaita Acharya, and Krishnadas Kaviraj says devotees should not take part of any of them. That's their family business.
Yeah.
So this is Krishna's family business. This is a very intimate family members.
Yes.
So he shows that all the Bhagavatam would be like that.
Yes.
Bhagavatam's persons who are mentioned in the Bhagavatam, they are family members of Krishna, most of them.
Yes.
So we need to understand, we need to make our capacity to understand them broader and broader, but not judging them.
Yes.
That's a very important principle. We can have different opinions.
Right.
We have also right to have different vision, different understanding. That doesn't mean that we have only right.
Right.
My view is the high view.
Correct. Yes. So that is why actually in connected with this is like mm, Prabhupada would sometimes make that observation. It is not always easy to understand the ways or the activities of devotees. Of course, this is very, as you pointed out, this is very unique and very special in that we're dealing with very exalted personalities who are pure devotees and who are very intimate associates of Lord Krishna. So that's even more, we have to be even more cautious in trying to maybe prematurely judge certain things that they may say or they may do. And in a general way, we know this expression, Shastra Chakshu. Devotees are devotees because they see things, they try to understand things through the eyes of Shastra, whereas mundane, ordinary people, because they are devoid of understanding, they don't know about Shastra, so they judge things uh, in a mundane manner. And of course, these are, as Krishna explains, excuse me, Janma Karma Same Divyam, his appearance and his activities are Divyam, transcendental, and he performs these pastimes with his devotees. That is also on the transcendental platform. So yes, that's why it is also mentioned uh, we have to be cautious, in dealing with with these subject matters or in dealing with devotees in general, and in particular, for example, that's the beginning of the Guru Vastakam, the prayers to the spiritual master. One should approach with caution the spiritual master, and we should approach in a general way with caution these transcendental subject matters which are described. Just like the other day, the topic of sati, which is a very, again, in the Western countries, people, they cannot even begin to understand why that was there and why it is authorized under certain, we could say, circumstances, or why, like we were discussing also on the topic of Dhanurveda, how in Vedic culture, in fighting, they follow they follow principles. If someone is unarmed, you cannot kill him. If one has a different type of weapon, then it should be of equal. There should be equal weapons in fighting. So many regulations are there, which are all, of course, intimately connected with making up such a high level culture. Vedic culture is a very refined culture, and most of us, especially coming from a Western background, of course, the whole modern day society, whether in the East or the West, I mean, the East is also very much negatively influenced by this Western culture, which is all pervading and so far away. The more we so-called advance in the Western culture, we actually go away from the real traditional culture, which is, it's not really an Eastern culture, but it is especially prominent in the Eastern countries. But we know, and that point Prabhupada nicely explained, that's actually our eternal culture. Vedic culture is not just an Indian culture, it's not just a Hindu culture, it's an eternal culture, it's Sanatana Dharma. And therefore Prabhupada would explain that, when I went to the Western countries, because one time Prabhupada was telling, he was in Vrindavan, he was telling his devotees, one person came to challenge me this morning. And that person, he said, you know, in the past, people have come and they've, the Christians have converted rather, they've converted Hindus to become Christians, and and others have converted others to become Muslim. And now here you're coming and you're converting people to become Hindus. And then Prabhupada was telling this person that he totally misunderstood. He totally misunderstands what we are doing, what this Krishna consciousness movement is doing. Sometimes even our own devotees fall into that trap. I know, for example, if I go to certain places, to have some program, devotees will introduce me, and they will kind of seem to emphasize too much. Well, you know, he's from a Christian background. He has converted. He's now become one of us. Which is, and I always a little disturbed when devotees kind of like play on that a little bit, because that's not really the case. Prabhupada, as he nicely explained to the devotees, when I went to the Western countries, I didn't tell people who are from a Christian background or Jewish background that now you give up your religion and you come to my religion, you become Hindu, right? Rather, Prabhupada introduced very nicely, probably for the first time, because vast majority of people in India, although they know the term dharma, because unless we read the Bhagavatam, we don't fully understand the real meaning of dharma. And it was Prabhupada's, I would say, expertise to introduce the concept of dharma in such a way that, from a Christian background, I knew I was not converting to another religion, but I was coming to the eternal religion, which is, and that's why so many devotees from so many different backgrounds have taken up the eternal religion of Sanatana Dharma, and it is exemplified, of course, in the pages of the Bhagavatam, in various other literatures, beginning, of course, from the Bhagavad Gita, where these principles of culture, of eternal culture, of divine culture, actually Prabhupada translates Varnashrama. I mean, even the word Varnashrama in the Bhagavatam, in one purport, he doesn't even use the word Daiva Varnashrama. Daiva Varnashrama, of course, is obvious, Daiva meaning divine, but he uses, very often he equates Sanatana Dharma to Varnashrama Dharma and to divine culture. Yeah? Because it is that culture which distinguishes us from any other culture, which brings us not only to the level of transcendence, not only to the level of spirituality, which is, of course, a major step, a major, difference from the ordinary consciousness that most people have, which is material, ordinary, mundane consciousness. Not only are devotees, Vaishnavas, brought from that mundane level of consciousness to the spiritual, but we are brought actually beyond the spiritual consciousness to the consciousness of what is called devotional consciousness. And Prabhupada, Srila Rupa Goswami makes that wonderful difference and gives a very elaborate explanation in the Nectar Devotion that the three, when he explains about three levels or three types of happiness, one being material or mundane happiness, which is the only level or the only understanding that most people have. And then those who are fortunate, they'll come to the spiritual consciousness that, okay, I'm something different from this body, there's something else beyond this material world. But then the higher level is what our Vaishnavas nicely described as devotional happiness, which is only possible if we know uh, about Godhead, about the nature of Godhead as being a person, because devotion, which means we equate basically love and devotion, right? Loving devotional service. So love or devotion is only possible between two people, right? So in the impersonal or Mayavad understanding, you can't really speak of devotion because everything is one, right? So that's a very unique, and that comes out, of course, in these types of pastimes or leelas that are being described here. And therefore, yeah, your point about we have to be cautious in seeing or judging things rather from our limited and generally kind of like obscure or impure, we could say, perspective. Uh,
And interesting Varnashram point is the position and the function of the ladies.
the position and
The function of the ladies.
sanction,
Function.
function. Okay, yes,
Like here we see that they are rulers, kings. They are kshatriyas are ruling,
yes,
and they are judging what happened, what not happened, who should be punished, who not.
mm.
But very important, the half of the popularity is generally women.
Yes, pretty well
And
everywhere.
man not necessarily will really understand women's nature and the cause of pain.
Yes,
So here Draupadi have a very good point. You don't know. You don't cry. You have a son died, but you don't cry.
right,
But I'm crying.
yes,
I know what does it mean. I have a son. You don't know.
right,
And that's also we have to consider in the modern age we have temples. And when temples grow, we think so simply, okay, the temple president, who may be a brahmachari, will nicely develop the temple community.
right,
But it is not true. Community, when there is a different sex like man, woman, children, they have to be developed by the leader who ready. And vives means couples of devotees who have child. That would be the best
yes,
if we have community leaders like such families who have children.
yes, yes.
Because then they have not just theoretical knowledge but experiential
Practical
knowledge, and they
experience.
can relate to different situations much more sensitively.
Which brings an interesting point, actually, because you're making a very valid point in terms of since in the world, I mean, more or less half of the population are ladies. So only ladies understand and feel or see things in a particular way, which is not always obvious to men here. But in the Vedic culture, as you mentioned, Arjuna here is taken into consideration the mindset and the feelings of and her perspective of his wife, of Draupadi. And in terms of community, I wanted to connect this also with, let's say, Gurukul, because so you're making the point that actually in developing communities, it's important that we have grihastas who have not only the philosophical understanding but the practical experience of having children and being more aware in a practical way of the needs of children. And it's interesting how, if we look at the Gurukul concept, because this was brought to my attention a bit more like maybe in the last few years, most of our experience within our ISKCON society in terms of Gurukul has been with sannyasis and brahmacharis who have organized and overseen Gurukulas. But actually, traditionally, most of the gurukuls, like in India, uh, were in the homes of the guru. Home of guru means he was a grihastha. And that's why when we read descriptions of Gurukula, it mentions about, the wife of the guru and how children who are Gurukul boys, uh, how they are meant to interact and relate with the wife of the guru. If the wife of the guru happens to be younger, then they should not do certain things. Uh, Mothers, by nature, are affectionate to their young children, and they will be affectionate to other children as well. So that injunction is there. For example, if the wife of the guru is younger, then she should not be dealing closely with some of the boys who are a little bit older, like that. And this is, in our context, I would say, something that needs more discussion and more attention in terms of establishing. So this aspect of Guru Patni, the wife of the Guru, we, especially if we want to establish, and we do, hundreds, if not thousands, of Gurukulas. India used to be having how many Gurukulas? It's been estimated that India used to have 7 lakhs Gurukulas.
How long
ago? Good question. We know for a fact that from the British times, things changed drastically. So practically speaking, part of the culture in Bharat, in India, was that practically in every village there were opportunities for Gurukula. I know, for example, that in Indonesia, which not so long ago was following Vedic culture, was actually Vaishnav. Actually, there were Vaishnava kings just 500 years ago. So even today, they have the same system, because I did my research on that. They have the exact same system as Gurukula. They call it a different name. They have a different syllabus, obviously. But they follow the basic principles are the same. They have boarding system. They have thousands. They have thousands of such Gurukulas that are called Pandak Pasantaran. Pasantaran is connected with the word Shantri, which is connected with Shastra, actually. So I visited a number of these, you could say, Islam Gurukulas, just like I went to a Christian Gurukula when I was younger. And so they follow the same principle. They only study, they read in Arabic language. They live it very simply. And some of these Gurukulas have, one of them that I visited had like 3,000 students. And they have thousands of these Gurukulas. There's a whole, actually, difference in terms of culture or mentality in the context of education, because some of them, those who are educationalists and many parents as well, prefer keeping this more traditional, just like in India. Those who know about Vedic culture understand to some extent the importance and the need of traditional Gurukula as opposed to the whole modern educational system. So I would say that, one would have to look a little bit more closely in terms of the history to find out when actually these 7 lakhs of Gurukulas, 700, because now India, for example, has the number of villages has come down somewhat, but there's still over 6 lakh villages in India, over 600,000 villages. And there used to be over 700,000 villages. And practically, so like in Indonesia, young boys from these gurukulas, they will, because every gurukula is somewhat different because it's based on who's teaching. And so you have, some place one who is very prominent, like scholar, and he specializes in this particular subject. So students would go from one gurukul to another to kind of catch or just retrieve different types of knowledge. So that's why to actually re-establish Vedic culture, this is like a fundamental element that we need to reintroduce the Gurukul system. That's only one aspect because Gurukul is, in terms of education, the academic aspect, academic side, which is limited actually to those who have that ability to take up such kind of study. But Srila Prabhupada, and I mean, this is one of the very important purports of the 10th canto where Prabhupada speaks on the subject matter of Vedic education. And in the context of Krishna and Balaram, when they are in Vrindavan, and when they are just old enough, means 6 and 7 years old, to start looking after the calves.
Yeah, which is big responsibility.
Big responsibility. I mean, Prabhupada in that purport is like 10th canto, 11th chapter, verse 37. I've memorized it because it's so important. 10, 11, 37. Prabhupada explains that this activity, this daily activity of going out with other friends and with the calves, every day, right? It's not that like on, well, today's Sunday, we don't. Every day. This is Vedic education.
Yeah.
There's 2 levels of education. There's the formal academic education that we call Gurukula, which is only for like maybe less than 1% of the population. Less than 1% of the population are Brahmanas, actually. Maybe 1 in 1,000.
So, just to understand,
Yes.
Gurukula system is specifically for the Brahmanas.
Brahmanas, the Gurukul system traditionally is for the Dvijas. That means Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. But of the 3, the ones that spend more time in Gurukula are generally Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. Brahmanas more, Kshatriyas less, and Vaishyas even less. Yeah. But even amongst these 3 categories, it's a small percentage. I mean, the smallest percentage of all are the Brahmanas. The second smallest percentage are the Kshatriyas. The third smallest percentage are the Vaishyas. And the largest percentage, like maybe 80% of the population, are Shudra. So that means, of course, nowadays, whenever we even mention the word Shudra, it has a negative connotation. But in the Vedic culture, it's not having, it's not having a negative connotation because Shudras are very important members of society. You basically have, in any society, 2 types of people. What are the 2 types of people? Those who are natural leaders and those who are meant to be natural followers. And nowadays, it's all artificial because we don't have qualified leaders. We don't have qualified natural leaders, largely because that training is not being provided. And also, we don't have that concept of being a natural follower. Rather, everyone, why should I follow? But actually, in the Vedic culture, because the whole spiritual aspect, devotional aspect of das anudas anudas, we're all ultimately meant to be followers. Follower means actually servant. So a Brahmana or even a Kshatriya, although he's a leader, a natural leader, he becomes a most exalted person by being Hare Krishna, by being a servant. Brahmana is servant to the people by giving knowledge. Kshatriya is a servant by protecting all the citizens in the country, by protecting the principles of dharma, etc. So it's a different understanding that can only be there, that can only develop if one has basic, let's say, understanding. So we need, our challenge is not only, that's the thing actually, we have a hard time, even as devotees, we have a hard time understanding about Gurukula, and we have an even harder time to understand about what is meant to be the natural Vedic education in terms of non-formal education, because we're all caught up in in modernization, industrialization, mechanization, and machines. It's like everyone practically is engaged in computer-oriented or computer type of activities, but that is that is not natural, and that is leading us very, very far away from some very basic and fundamental principles and concepts of life, which are very difficult to actually understand once we become overly absorbed in a modern way of life. So therefore, Prabhupada stressed naturally the importance of creating communities. Communities in terms of communities in rural areas where one is actually connected with the land, with nature, with the cows, because land and cows are fundamental to actually creating a, a living condition that will more naturally, more easily, more scientifically as well, help to meet the needs at the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual level of all the members of society. So yeah, it's like a different consciousness, a different consciousness. That's why as devotees, when we say Krishna consciousness, we have to be careful. Krishna consciousness doesn't mean only Krishna consciousness. It means becoming conscious of what, Krishna's whole plan, Krishna's whole creation, being conscious of nature, for example, which is one area that you're especially kind of involved with. And it's only when one, interacts or spends time that one starts to understand certain aspects that others who are just not giving that time, the importance of nature and how we should respect nature and how we should avoid, which is the opposite of what we're doing in modern day society. We should avoid exploiting the natural resources of nature, etc., like that. So that's why these two things are intimately connected, interrelated. The that's, I would say, the meaning of culture. That's why Prabhupada also, that Krishna consciousness uh, is meant to introduce a cultural, we could say, Prabhupada uses the word cultural revolution. We are meant to introduce this understanding in a cultural way. That means it's not just something spiritual, because dharma is not only on the spiritual level, dharma is also on the material level. And there's a need for blending these two levels. And it's not always easy to do that. It's not always obvious. Yeah.
That also another point is the character of the person, to consider that the same deed two person does, but if their character is quite different,
Yeah.
then we have to understand that the dealing of that situation also should be considering that person, like we hear Ashwattham, have a higher nature, so he didn't like a rubber in the street. he didn't come to a family very natural, just killing. All his life was not a killer, not a crazy person. He become somehow crazy, but that's temporary.
Right.
And we have to accept that he did a lot of nice things, a lot of good things.
Right.
So also when we see someone is doing something very bad, horrible things, but if the person have a good character, we have to consider that he did so many nice things before. He should taken care of differently than someone has naturally a bad character person. Still, Ravana was dealt with.
Ravana.
Yeah, Krishna, Ramachandra told, if you give back Sita, okay, just I leave you.
Right.
But he was not ready for that.
Correct.
And Duryodhana was like, Krishna told that if you just give 5 villages, okay, you can remain in your position.
Correct.
So the character also important. If someone proving that whole life he has a high character, that's also you have to consider.
Yeah. In our understanding, character character needs to be directly connected with dharma.
Yeah, but one point, someone
One
have
may
some
deviate
effect,
sometimes. Yeah.
something influencing the person under short period of time.
Yeah.
This was there's a problem that so long Duryodhana was influencing others. Duryodhana was the key element. So
Right.
he influenced many, not perfect persons, but at least normal, correct persons to become like that.
Well, Prabhupada would explain how the in the Vedic culture, the most important element, especially in the context of Gurukul, for example, and in general as well, but more so in the context of Gurukul, is what is called character formation, isn't it? So, yeah.
And that's why, Gurukul should very carefully choose whom can be part of the students.
Yes, yeah.
Not everyone is prepared themselves for being a good student, so
Yeah.
don't have to force, like everyone should learn in a school.
Yeah. Well, as we mentioned a little earlier, Gurukul actually is for a very small percentage, very small number of individuals, and it's interesting because we have our acharyas who give us guidelines how to. This is going to be something very interesting that we're going to be introducing here, which has not been introduced very much. But there are guidelines given both by Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur how to select, how to understand the varna of an individual. Because maybe, for example, I mean, my thinking is that, especially if we don't know somebody, it will take like maybe 1 year, a certain period of time, to really figure out who is this guy. Is he more like a Brahmana? Is he more like a Kshatriya? Or like that?
Can you imagine that one devotional community, they have maybe 30, 40, 100 children,
Right.
but most of them naturally not higher than Shudra nature. If you force
Right,
them
right.
to the
Yes,
Gurukul,
yes.
what will happen? Or
Of
the
course.
Gurukul will like fall apart.
Yeah. The Gurukul will no longer be Gurukul.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why even amongst our devotees, okay, philosophically, yes, a Vaishnava is higher than Brahmana.
If he's Vaishnava,
But
not
who's a
just
Vaishnava?
formally.
That's the point Prabhupada was making. It's not at all easy to be a Vaishnava, right? So yes, a pure Vaishnava automatically has the qualities of a Brahmana. But yeah, it's obvious. Not everyone, very few are pure Vaishnavas, number one. And that's the point also, most important instruction given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that I was sharing that with a few devotees just a few days ago, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says Varnashrama is that system for the Vaishnavas in their conditioned state. Very important statement, very powerful, because we generally think, well, me, conditioned? By actual elevated pure Vaishnava is not conditioned, but the majority are working towards attaining that level. So there are specific guidelines, and sometimes devotees they kind of like prematurely, and I would say immaturely also, say that, listen, we don't have to, it's against our philosophy also. We should not designate people. Well, if we should not designate people, then why are some people wearing sannyas dress and saffron and white? These are designations. So we cannot do away with designations, but it's a question of mentality. We accept, because it's part of the material existence, we accept different designations. We're either, men or women. We're either a president or whatever. But we know that these are temporary designations. So as long as that consciousness, clear consciousness is there, we can work with, and that's the point Prabhupada is making, that otherwise he would not have told, you make a curriculum to train Brahmanas. You make another curriculum to train Kshatriyas, and another curriculum to train Vaishyas, and a fourth curriculum to train Shudras, right? And that's what Varnashram College is meant to do, is to have these clear-cut, clearly defined curriculum, and then within 1 year, whoever might be admitted. The basic criteria to admit somebody is that somebody has to follow the 4 rules and regulations, is that somebody has to chant and agree to the basic, rules and regulations that are there within the ashram, let's say. And then within a certain period of time, one comes to know what is the more obvious nature of an individual, and then one will direct and assist and help that particular individual. Okay, these are the subject matters of someone who actually can become a Brahmana. You go ahead and start studying astrology, or you start your deep study of Sanskrit, or you study Ayurveda, because these require many years of study, isn't it? And we need such people within society who will be devotees. And in the early days, Prabhupada gave less importance to that. As a matter of fact, he discouraged some devotees. One of my godbrothers, for example, was inclined to become a doctor, and he was in 2 minds, because and so he actually ended up consulting with Srila Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada told him, no, you just concentrate on becoming a devotee like that. In other cases, Prabhupada encouraged some devotees, you continue your studies. So it was like individual somewhat. And of course, the whole mood initially was, okay, whatever education is required, just now become focused on, because the urgency is there.
emergency situation.
Yeah, right. Now, when we speak in terms of the context of larger society and establishing communities, rural communities, the ideal, we can establish communities in our cities, but it's of a different nature. It's a city community where you won't have people in the cities learning how to plow the land because there's no land to plow. And you won't teach people how to look after cows because there's no place for cows, and there are regulations that don't allow cows to be kept in the cities. So some aspects of the Varnashrama culture you can introduce in the cities, but actually the more complete uh, life, Vedic lifestyle, which is primarily agrarian, is meant to be introduced in villages in the country. Yeah, and that's actually meant for the vast majority of our of people in general, and not only of common people, but of our own devotees. Yeah, we have yet to see how this will turn out, how this will unfold, but yeah, Hare Krishna. They're all over the place. We have many devotees attending Bhagavatam class.
Yeah.
So Maharaj, just to understand,
Yeah.
there are two kinds of education, formal and non-formal.
Yes.
And formal being the not so major part of the mainstream, meaning
Not for the vast majority of
yes,
people.
not for the vast majority. So that would mean non-formal. What would non-formal education look like if the kids are not attending Gurukula?
Yes.
They'd be grazing cows, or they'd be
All kinds of cottage industry. If we look in a village country situation, where, see, in Varnashram College, one of the faculties is called Varta, Faculty of Economics. And Vedic economy, which is natural, simple, but at the same time very scientific and also sustainable, is in connection with Krishi Goraksha. Krishi, agriculture and cows, isn't it? So the whole, the ideal example and sample prototype for us is Vrindavan village, where Krishna lived. So that is where we see the ideal economy, because that was the whole economy of Vrindavan and of all the villages in India up until just 200 years ago, you see. And it just so happens that this is when the British came, in the early days of what we call the age of industrialization, which has changed the whole, surface of the planet, bringing us away from what is meant to be the more simple and natural way. So that means that the majority of people, majority of young boys, for example, because in villages there used to be hundreds and thousands of cows. When there are hundreds and thousands of cows and bulls, and where the main activity for plowing is using bullocks, and where there are cows to be milked every day, and all kinds of people are cooking using cow dung, the natural. So there's all kinds of activities related to this lifestyle, which therefore is what we call today. We have different what we call vocational training in modern day society. So this vocational training in the Vedic culture was connected with things related to agriculture and cow care. So different kinds of cottage industry, like
Create chariots means
yeah,
bullock cars.
making different instruments for
Instruments.
knives, so there, what do you call it?
Storing things
Yes,
like pots.
So, yeah, pottery. So different crafts and different arts. There are 64 arts that are actually described in the Shastra. So these are all the natural. This is what Gandhi was envisioning actually and promoting actually before independence, and Prabhupada fully supports that, of course, because that is the Vedic way or the Vedic culture. So before now, we were totally away from that, and so that involves traditional technologies, traditional sciences, how to uh, most of the people, most people are buying what is called commercial oil, which is actually a cause of so many diseases, because the traditional way of making the oil, what we had in villages, oil ghani. This is called cold press oil. Yeah, right. So all of these different things is what existed previously, and some of these things we're trying to showcase here actually to some extent, because we don't have that much land. If we had more land, we could showcase more. But these are the kind of things that we need to, when our devotees begin to understand that, yes, actually this is the Vedic culture, and especially when we know, if we have learned, if we had heard, if we have listened to Prabhupada's classes or his conversations or read his books, that this whole modern setup, which is very artificial and which is totally unsustainable, after some time will not be there. So where are we going to be? So Prabhupada's point was that as devotees, knowing that we have built a whole civilization, modern day civilization, which is not based on principles of dharma, which means not based on principles of sustainability, then Prabhupada wanted us, in a parallel manner, okay, to be in the cities for preaching, but also to develop these self-sufficient communities, so that when the collapse will come, because the collapse, all empires, you know, have had a particular lifespan, and they've studied. They have kind of assessed that most empires, like the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, etc., generally lasted about 200 years, and we're right there now. Prabhupada said 50 years ago, I think it was in 1973 or 74, that the automobile industry will last only about 50 years. So 50 years ago. So it's like, it's crazy. It's like people in Bangalore, I don't know how Madhava is working things out, but they have a huge water crisis. Delhi is developing the same crisis. I mean, all the cities will develop the same crisis, because, how much, how long can you go on just doing bore wells and extracting in an unnatural way waters that a lot of which is used also wasted actually in many ways. Anyways, all of the things we're doing in modern day society is having its toll, is having its effect, its negative effect globally on so many aspects, practically all the different aspects of our lives. So that's why there's a need to understand, the basic fundamental principles that are being given actually in the Shastra, not only to understand them theoretically, but actually to translate that in a practical way in terms of our daily lives. Yeah. So that means that that's why Prabhupada one time, many years back, I remember hearing that in Vedic culture, people don't go to school. But actually they go to different type of school. Just like sometimes we see videos, somebody will say, my farm is my school. My forest is my school. So it's like that. And that nature is our school. And in the Vedic culture, everyone is educated. It's not that because he's not a Brahmana, he's not going to Gurukul, that he's not getting an education. He's getting a different type of education. And of course, in the Vedic culture, the fundamental spiritual education is there, and then so many other types of education also are there. And that education is for simultaneously for boys as well as for girls. but viticulture takes into consideration the basic differences that are there and the different roles and responsibilities, which is a far cry from what we see in modern day society, which is creating all kinds of artificial and irregular type of very challenging situations. Yeah. So welcome to Sriram Mayapur and and to our Varnashram. Actually, we're developing. Developing means we're especially going to give focus that will become obvious within a few months on what is called Varnashram. This will become a Varnashram resource center. And we're coming out with a new website or a revived, we already have a website, but a revived website which will convey that possibly more forcibly, more clearly. And on that website, we're going to have a global Varnashram resource catalog, because that's what people need. People need information. They need expertise. They need people. They need to know, well, okay, who can I turn to get this information? Where can I go to get this particular kind of training? That is more real. That is more connected with sustainable living, sustainable way of living. So basically, yeah. We have another beautiful sunny day. So that means our workers will come, because 5 days I was kind of like starting to pull out my Sika. The workers are not coming. How I can open this, because we have a target that before Kartik, this building and this building, this is our guest house actually, Srivas Bhavan, will be ready so that we can receive and accommodate devotees, students. Yeah. Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Yeah.